I made the toast at my daughter's dinner. Then I picked up my phone. Change of plans, everyone. We're eating at a restaurant tonight. Adults only. My mother sent that message to 23 people at once, 45 seconds before she bothered to send me anything at all. I checked the timestamps later. That gap told me everything about the order of things in her heart. My name is Grace Morgan. I'm 41. I run a diner in a small town in Michigan, the kind of place where the coffee's always hot and nobody asks for the Wi-Fi password. I've spent 6 years flipping eggs at 4:30 in the morning, which teaches you a few things. One of them is patience. The other is knowing exactly when patience runs out. That afternoon, my patience found its floor. My daughter Nora is 17. She's quiet in the way that means she's paying attention, not the way that means she has nothing to say. She works the weekend line at my diner, and she shows love the way I do, with her hands, not with words. When her grandmother's 70th birthday came up on the calendar, Nora didn't buy a card. She planned a dinner. She spent 2 weeks texting relatives, asking each one the same question. What's the dish that made you happiest at a family table? She wrote down every answer like it mattered because to her it did. Chicken and dumplings for one aunt. Baked mac and cheese for the cousins. And for her grandmother a peach cobbler, the one my mother had spent 30 years bragging about, the one nobody had gotten quite right since her own grandmother passed. Nora found a version of the recipe and tested it 4 times until my kitchen smelled like a county fair. She paid for the whole thing herself. $340 of tip money and babysitting cash. When I tried to hand her my card at the store, she pushed it back. It's my gift, Mom. It only counts if it costs me something. She hand-lettered place cards for all 23 guests. The one for her grandmother had a gold border. She redid it twice to get the line straight. I should tell you I didn't walk my daughter into this blind. I know my mother. 3 weeks before the dinner, I texted her the plan in writing. Birthday dinner, our house, Saturday, 6 o'clock, Nora cooking everything. She wrote back one word. Fine. Not lovely. Not thank you. Fine. After 25 years of hosting her events, I know fine is a warning, not an answer. So a week later at Sunday lunch I asked again out loud in front of witnesses. She waved her hand like she was brushing crumbs off a tablecloth. Yes, of course. Your house. Then she turned to her friend from the club and added, Grace's place is cozy. Homey, you know. Simple. I heard it. I logged it. And like I'd done for 25 years, I translated it into something I could live with. She's old-fashioned. She'll melt when she tastes the cobbler. I had spent my whole life being fluent in my mother. It turns out fluency is its own kind of blindness, because that little comment wasn't a slight. It was a door quietly swinging open. And on the other side of it, 3 weeks later at 4:15 on a Saturday afternoon, walked her friend's gift. A private room at the nicest restaurant in town, and an invitation that didn't include my daughter. The day of the dinner, Nora was up before I was, and I get up at 4:30 for a living. By 7 she had the kitchen running like a real kitchen, stations marked with tape, pans stacked by size, a timeline pinned to the cabinet counting backward from 6 o'clock. Chicken and dumplings. The mac and cheese doubled for the cousins. Green beans the way her late grandfather used to make them because she wanted him there somehow. Rolls from scratch, which I told her was madness and which she made anyway. And the cobbler, timed to come out warm at 6:15, so the house would smell like her grandmother's childhood the second the candles went in. At 4, she stood in the doorway looking at 9 hours of work laid out across the table, and she let herself smile. At 4:15 my phone lit up on the counter. I remember the exact time because the oven timer read 1:45 on the cobbler, and I remember thinking, surely not even my mother, not today. The message went to the family group chat first. All 23 of us. Then 45 seconds later, one line came to me alone. You can bring the cobbler if you want. Adults only. I stood in my kitchen and read it 3 times the way you reread a lab result that can't be right. My daughter was upstairs putting on the dress she'd bought for that night. On my stove sat 6 finished dishes for 23 people. On my dining table sat 23 place cards. and the one at the head of the table had a gold border she'd drawn twice to get it straight. I called my mother. Straight to voicemail. She was at the salon. I knew because she'd posted a photo from the chair, fresh curls, caption 70 and fabulous. I called again. Nothing. I texted her. Please call me. Nora cooked all day. The answer came 9 minutes later, and it wasn't a call. Don't make this difficult, Grace. A restaurant is simply more appropriate. Adults only. There it was, twice in one afternoon. Not a slip. Policy. I turned around to figure out what I was going to say to my daughter, and I didn't have to because she was already standing in the doorway in her new dress, phone in her hand. She'd read the group chat too. Of course she had. She was one of the 23. She set her phone down, picked up the sugar shaker, and went back to finishing the cobbler. Without looking up, she said, in a voice so level it broke something in me cleaner than crying ever could. It's okay, Mom. I'm used to it. 17 years old, 9 hours into a gift, and her first instinct was to comfort me. I stood in that doorway and did math I'd avoided my whole life. Every recital my mother missed for a card game. Every birthday move because it clashed with her calendar. Every time I'd knelt down to my daughter's eye level and said, "She loves you in her own way, be patient with her." I thought I was building a bridge. Standing there with 9 hours of patience coming out of my oven, I finally saw what I'd actually built. A manual for how to accept being ranked, and I'd handed it to my own child, one gentle translation at a time. My mother's rules had always been simple. If you grew up inside them, there was a real table and a lesser one. There was a guest list and a waiting list. I ate at the folding card table in her den until I was 23, promoted, her word, the year I got engaged, because a fiancé finally made me a full household. My brother never had to earn a seat. He showed up with a bottle of wine and got a toast. I showed up with 3 days of cooking and got asked where the serving spoons were. I called my brother anyway because some old part of me still believed that if we pushed on the same wall together, it might move. It's her 70th, Grace, he said, a golf broadcast humming behind him. Don't make it a thing. It's already a thing, I told him. Your niece made 23 place cards for a thing. Kids don't care about that stuff as much as you think. Come or don't come. But if this blows up, it's not going to be Mom who did it. You know how this works. I did know how it worked. That was the whole problem. My husband James came home from an ice run to a kitchen that smelled like a party and looked like a funeral. He listened, jaw working, and said the reasonable thing I'd said to myself 100 times over the years. One dinner, Grace. We grit our teeth, we go, we come home. He wasn't wrong by the old rules. He was just quoting them accurately. Then he walked past Nora at the counter, not crying, which would have been easier, just wrapping the 6 dishes into containers one by one, calm and careful, labeling each lid the way I'd taught her at the diner. 9 hours of love being folded up and put in the fridge like leftovers nobody wanted. I watched 15 years of keeping the peace drain out of my husband right there on the kitchen floor. He set his glass down, looked at me, not his phone, not the door, me, and asked the only question left in the house. What are you going to do? I didn't fully know yet. What I did know was that my mother had one phone call left before she spent it for good. She answered on the first ring, hair done, plan locked in, victory already in her voice. Grace, please tell me you're not calling to be dramatic. I offered her a way out with no teeth in it at all, the kind of offer you make when you're still hoping the person you love is in there somewhere. Bring the food to the restaurant, call it family style. Or move the restaurant to Sunday and keep tonight as planned. Either way, her friend's gift still counted. Either way, her granddaughter got to give hers too. Silence. Then her voice, cool as good china. It's my 70th birthday, Grace, not a teenager's project. She can cook for the family some other time. A pause. Wear the blue dress. It's slimming. And she hung up. I stood among my own canned tomatoes in the pantry, phone warm against my ear, and understood the shape of the door that had just closed. The private room seated 12. 23 people had been invited to the party. She had already decided which 11 of us were furniture. 4:40, my phone lit up one last time. Since you haven't confirmed, I expect you and James at the restaurant at 7. Alone. This is not a debate. If you sulk at home instead, don't bother with Thanksgiving. And don't expect me to explain to the family why my own daughter boycotted my 70th. They'll draw their own conclusions. I read it twice. Every sentence in that message was a hostage. My daughter was the ransom. The holidays were the ransom. My name in front of the family was the ransom. For 25 years I had paid every one of those bills in full, and called it being the bigger person. I looked at the stove. 6 dishes still warm. I looked at the table. 23 place cards all waiting. I looked at the ceiling toward my daughter's room, where a girl who had just said I'm used to it was probably lying on her bed, teaching herself to mean it. There was no seat left for me at my mother's table. She had removed the last one herself in writing at 4:40 in the afternoon. All that was left was deciding which woman I was going to be by 6 o'clock, the one who had spent 25 years asking politely for a better chair, or the one who finally stood up and built her own table instead. I picked up my phone one more time, and for the first time in my life, I didn't write a single word to soften what was coming. I sat on the edge of my bed for 10 minutes and did the thing I'd avoided for 25 years. I audited myself, not my mother. The recital my mother missed for a card game. I was the one who knelt down and said she loves you in her own way. The birthday moved for her brunch schedule. I called that flexible. The swim meet nobody came to, where Nora scanned the bleachers twice and found nothing. I texted photos to the family afterward with 3 exclamation points, so nobody would have to feel bad about not being there. Every one of those translations had felt like protection at the time. Sitting there with the clock running, I finally heard them the way my daughter must have filed them. A grown woman explaining patiently over and over why her hurt shouldn't count. My mother built the ranking system. Fine. But I was the one who'd taught my daughter to accept her rank politely. That's the thought that finally stood me up off that bed. I could not win Nora a better seat at my mother's table. Nobody could. That table was built plank by plank so that someone always sat below the good china. The only move I'd never once tried, hiding in plain sight behind 25 years of diplomacy, wasn't to argue for a chair. It was to set a different table entirely. I found Nora on her bed, sweatpants on, dress hanging untouched, watching a cooking show with the sound off, which is what she does instead of crying. I sat beside her and didn't soften a thing. Here's what I'm thinking, I said. We open our doors tonight. 6 o'clock like we planned. I invite the whole family, kids first. Your grandmother will take it as a declaration of war. Some people will still go to the restaurant. It might be 4 of us eating 6 dishes. I looked at her. If we do this, you're not a kid whose party got rescued. You're the one who decides. It's your food. Your call too. She was quiet a long moment, weighing the ants, the empty chairs, all of it. Because my daughter is not naive, she is fluent in this family too. Then she paused the silent television and looked at me. And for the first time since 4:15, something under the flatness in her face woke back up. If it's 4 people, she said, I'm still plating it in courses. A beat. You'd really do that to Grandma? Not to her, baby. For you. There's a difference. Tonight seems like a good night to finally learn it. She nodded once. Chef to chef. We had a dinner to run. I sat at the counter and wrote 3 drafts to the family chat before I found the right one. The first was a list of every date my mother had ever rearranged for herself, accurate, satisfying, and a trial disguised as a text. I deleted it. The second was sarcasm, since the private room only seats 12, deleted because sarcasm was my mother's language, and I was done being fluent in it. The third apologized in advance, explained everyone to everyone, softened the truth until it disappeared. Deleted slowest of all, because that draft was the woman I'd been for 25 years, and she died hard. What finally worked had no argument in it at all. An invitation doesn't argue. It just opens a door and stands there with the porch light on. At 5 o'clock, before anything else, I texted my mother privately, because whatever else she was still my mother and deserved to hear the door open first. Mom, I love you and happy birthday. I'm not coming to the restaurant without Nora. I won't leave her home like a coat. Dinner is still at our house at 6. Everything she cooked for you is on the table, and the seat at the head has your name on it in gold. It'll be there at 6, and it'll still be yours if you walk in at 8. I hope you come. Either way, I'm done choosing between my mother and my daughter. I choose the table where both of you fit. I sent it before the old translator and me could talk me out of it. The 3 dots rose on her side stopped rose again. A woman who had never in her life sent a first draft, composing and recomposing. Then they vanished, and one word surfaced under my message and sat there. Seen. 5:03 p.m. Read and dismissed the way you dismiss a waiter. It hurt. After 41 years, it still found the gap in the armor. But it did me one last favor. It burned any bridge I might have been tempted to keep standing on. She'd seen the open door. She was choosing the room that seated 12 anyway. At 5:05, I sent the second message to all 23 of us, right under her restaurant announcement. 2 photographs, the table fully set, 23 place cards catching the evening light, and the cobbler golden and clearly homemade. No accusation. Nothing to argue with. Dinner is still at 6 at our house exactly as planned. Everything on this table was cooked for Grandma by Nora, from her favorite recipes. Everyone is welcome. Kids especially. Then I turned my phone face down and refused to check it. My husband did the same in solidarity, and we stood in the kitchen like 2 people waiting out a coin toss neither of us had asked for. At 5:58 the doorbell rang. It was my cousin's family, 3 kids in tow, one already reaching for me from her mother's hip. "We were always coming here," she said, handing me a bag of rolls nobody needed. The other invitation didn't include my kids, so it didn't include me. More followed. An aunt who's never once shown up without her coat already off. A great aunt from my father's side with a bottle of sparkling cider for the chef. 14 people, counting us, filled a house built for 23, and somehow it didn't feel empty at all, because children count double when a house is being measured for warmth. The gold-bordered card sat all night in front of an empty chair. I never once moved it. Nora tied her apron back on and ran the whole thing like a real service. Chicken and dumplings set down in front of an aunt who had to fan her own face, mac and cheese mobbed by cousins, green beans made the way her grandfather liked them. Nobody at that table was furniture. Every place had cost the same 9 hours. I heard about the other party secondhand, the way you always do in a small town. 9 people in a private room built for 12. My mother at the head in her salon curls, the food reportedly excellent, the toasts reportedly brief, and my mother, by all accounts, checking her phone twice during the entree. For a woman with her posture about phones at the table, that's practically a flare fired over the bow. At 8:53 the family chat came back to life. Someone posted a photo of the cobbler, half gone. Then the kids' table, juice boxes raised mid-toast. Then the place cards, no captions, no commentary, just a door standing open and photographs where everyone could see it. The last guests left at 10. Nora fell asleep sitting up on the couch, apron still half tied. And James carried her up the stairs the way he used to when she was small. I stood alone in the kitchen washing the last pan, and that's when it finally hit me. Not triumph, nothing that shiny. Just her voice at 4:15. "It's okay, Mom. I'm used to it." I cried quietly into the dish steam. For a girl who had taught herself to expect the folding table, and for the 25 years of me that handed her the lesson. My mother didn't call that night. Somewhere across town she was taking off her earrings in a quiet house, turning 70, furious at me. Some small part of me still wanted to drive over and fix it. That part doesn't die in one night. I don't think it dies at all. But standing at that sink, I finally understood the difference between being afraid of her anger and grieving what I'd have to survive without her. And I could survive her anger. What I could not survive was my daughter, at 40, telling a child of her own, "I'm used to it." My aunt stayed to help dry dishes because she always stays, and she gave me the missing piece of my mother I'd never had. "She wasn't born like this," she said. Her first Thanksgiving as a young bride, her mother-in-law sat her in the kitchen. Not near it, in it. Told her the dining table was for family, and she wasn't family yet, just married to it. She ate standing at the counter every holiday for years, listening to them laugh through the wall. She used to say your uncle earned her a seat, a baby earning his mother a chair. She folded the towel into a neat square. They ranked her. So the day she finally got a table of her own, she started ranking too. She didn't invent that rule book, Grace. She inherited it. Doesn't excuse it. But that's where the ink came from. I stood with my hands in the cooling water and let that land. It explained everything. It changed nothing. Understanding where the ink came from, I finally said, doesn't unwrite the sentence. It just tells me how far back it goes. Sunday morning, 8:40, alone with my coffee, the doorbell rang. Through the frosted glass I knew the shape right away. My mother's posture arrives 10 seconds before she does. But something about it was wrong. Stillness. My mother doesn't wait at doors. Every door in this family had always been functionally hers. This shape just stood there, rang once and waited, a paper bag held in both hands like something from a waiting room. I didn't rush. Not to punish her. I was done being the one who sprinted to smooth things over before they could mean anything. I let the kettle finish. Then I opened the door. She came in like a diplomat entering a country that had voted the wrong way. Chin level, eyes doing inventory. She saw the dining table still extended, cloth still on, 23 place cards still lined up, her gold-bordered one still waiting at the head in front of an empty chair. Something crossed her face and vanished like a fish under ice. She sat, accepted the tea, and opened with the sentence she'd clearly written in the car. The family's saying you split us apart. You'll post something today. Light and gracious, 2 celebrations, 1 big happy weekend. Then we never speak of it again. Not sorry. Not what did I miss. Been. She'd lost the whole night. The food, the family, the photos, and driven here before 9 the next morning to negotiate for the only territory she'd ever really governed. The story. I'm not posting anything, I said. I didn't split the family. I set a table. Everyone was invited, you most of all. Your name's still on it in gold. People sat where they wanted. That's not a mix-up. That's just what happened, and everyone in that chat watched it happen. She tried every tool she had, one at a time, and none of them worked on a woman who no longer needed a seat. It was my 70th, Grace. Then softer, offered like a kindness. Fine, Nora can sit at the main table at Christmas. Even now, she could only imagine the problem as a seating error, solvable by promotion. 1 chair, granted from the throne. 10 years ago I'd have taken that deal and driven home glowing. I just declined it the way you decline a coupon for a store you've stopped shopping at. Her shoulders came down half an inch. Her voice lost its polish. And she asked me the first honest question she'd asked in 25 years. Then what do you want from me, Grace? Nothing from me. We're square. I got everything I needed last night. It's Nora you owe. She's on the back steps. Go tell her, not me her, what her cooking meant to you. She looked at the back door the way soldiers look at open ground. Then she picked up her paper bag and went. I watched through the window. My mother, in pressed slacks and day-old curls, lowered herself onto the concrete step beside my daughter, not the chair 2 feet away, the step, and opened the bag. Inside was a single container of cobbler, brought by my aunt to her porch the night before with a note. At least taste it. She'd brought her own good silver fork. She'd come armed for a ceremony. I couldn't hear what passed between them. I only know she ate the whole thing slowly, and that when she finished, Nora went inside and came back with a handwritten menu, and my mother read every line of it with her finger, the way she reads hymnals. They sat there 10 more minutes. No tears you could see from a window. No hug for a highlight reel. Just 2 people at the same level sharing the same pan of history. On her way out, my mother paused at my front door and straightened a picture frame that was already straight. Without quite looking at me, she said, "The seasoning in the chicken and dumplings. Nobody's gotten that right since your grandmother." Then she left spine first into the Sunday morning. That was the entire apology. 1 inch of ground delivered sideways about seasoning. But I'd spent 41 years fluent in her, and I knew the translation. That inch was the whole war. It's been 6 weeks now. The first Sunday of every month my table gets extended again, cloths on, new place cards down the middle. Nora's table now by her own rule, no head, no assigned seats, just people wherever the conversation needs them. My mother came to the first one. She sat in the middle at a card that read simply in gold, "Grandma." Same ink as everyone else's. I watched her read it and slip it into her pocket when she thought no one was looking. She missed the second Sunday for a club luncheon, and here's the miracle nobody warns you about, it was fine. The door stayed open. Nobody grieved. The cobbler still came out warm at 6:15. She can come sit in the warmth as an equal or she can miss it. And either way the weather in my house doesn't answer to her anymore. Nora's applying to culinary school this fall. Her application essay opens with a birthday dinner for 14 people. I spent 25 years asking for a better seat at my mother's table. It turns out the only thing I ever had to do was build my own, because the people who truly love you were never waiting for a ranking to find their chair. They were just waiting to be asked.